Okay, well, welcome to the final Women's Network event on our theme of how I became a ... for 2020. We have a full programme of 4 for next year, but this evening is for Waveney Williams to tell us how she became a social worker, and she's just been telling me that she's managed to reduce 45 years in the business and development into half an hour, so I'm sure at the end of it there'll be plenty of questions. So over to you, Waveney.
Thank you very much. I have to say to this club for inviting me to speak. I'm pleased to be able to do that. I always like talking about my work, which is social work, which I love, I still do. So this is going to be almost a sprint, because I've done so much in such a long period of time that I really had to condense it into accommodating half an hour. However, I am going to leave what I think is the better part of this to the second half. So I won't be concentrating too much on my early days arriving in England. I'm not talking too much about issues that were prevalent at the time. They are all well documented, things about finding accommodation and similar issues. I came to England in fact, it was the 2nd or the 3rd of January 1961, but I left Guyana by sea just after Boxing Day. Quite an interesting sea voyage, hadn't done one before. And I have to say, the first thing when I arrived at Waterloo station, we came to Southampton, the train came into Waterloo and I was in a state of shock, because it's for the first time I'd seen white people doing menial tasks. There was a man who was sweeping the station, and can't remember what we were doing, because, well, I'm sure people will recall, or if you do recall or you don't know, in the colonies, because Guyana was still a colony, it was still British Guyana, white people only had managerial or kind of civil service administrative jobs. Never would you see them doing menial. And that was I wasn't the only person who was shocked about this. Lots of people who had come at that time would say the same thing. However, after my initial shock, the next thing was my surprise at the amount of prejudice that was around at the time, that was directed at Black people and, in fact, strangers in this country. I didn't expect that, because that wasn't my experience living in colonial Guyana. So I came rather reluctantly, because I'd only been recently married, and my let me back up a little bit. I came with a work experience. I was in my upper 20s, and I'd had training and work experience in nursing, in teaching, and then in social welfare. So I was quite prepared for probably taking on any job, but no, I didn't particularly want an administrative job. So after the first surprise and then shock at the amount of prejudice, I actually wanted to go back to Guyana. I really did. My husband persuaded me to come because I had a lovely job. It was creative. I didn't want to leave it. But he wanted me to be by his side because he was training to be a barrister, and he thought it would have been easier if we were together to do this. So I came and didn't work or didn't do anything for 2.5 years. I couldn't actually get to grips with the accommodation problems and generally the status with which I had seen a number of Black people in this country. So we stayed together with all the accompanying problems about finding accommodation not even going to mention that because that's all well and truly written about, talked about. Everybody knows the problems about that. Suffice it to say, we experienced the same thing. So for 2.5 years, I stayed home with my first child. And after that, at the end of 2.5 years, I thought, okay, I'm not going back to Guyana now, so I may as well start looking for jobs. The first job I was offered was a British Rail, and I thought it was some small kind of secretarial or office job. I arrived expecting to be, well, in an office. And as I arrived, the boss, I think he was, said to me, "Come on, ducks, there's the urn over there, get cracking with the teas." Now again, this is going to be another shock. I've never made a cup of tea in my life. It was always, we were always coffee drinkers in Guyana. And I looked at this urn and these people, there were 11 cups. And I had to do, and they had like buttered rolls or something. I made the tea and they had the tea, but they were all interested in asking me, these was 11 men, they came around me and the urn and were interested, they wanted to know where I was from. Okay, we covered that. And then after they'd gone back to their tasks, the boss said to me, "Well, get cracking now on the room." This was a dirty room to sleep out. So I looked at him and the room, and then it was near lunchtime. I went home and never looked back. Okay. Subsequently, I decided, my husband suggested to me, why not try the civil service? Again, I never worked in an office, even though I had secretarial skills. So I applied. First, I wanted to be a probation officer. Went to the office, was selected for training, and as I was leaving, as an afterthought, the person who interviewed me said to me, "Well, you know, if you were appointed, you would have to serve anywhere in England and Wales." Again, that would not have suited my situation. I don't even know that was true. I think she just didn't want me to be on the course. And I didn't bother with that. So I applied for various civil service jobs, got them with the Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Health, and then local government in Whitehall. I chose the Whitehall one because it was near. I lived in Clapham at the time. And I was offered this job to start on the 2nd of January, 1963. My job, the appointment letter said, "You're appointed the established civil service as an executive officer and with the salary scale and whatnot." So I arrived, there were 2 other people who were being interviewed. So 2 or 3 other people, it wasn't champagne, who were being welcomed to the civil service on that day. So they went in individually, and I was the 3rd person to go in. There was just 3 of us. And when it came to my turn, I went into the room, and of course you were asked to produce your certificates. I had all my certificates, overseas junior, senior, higher senior, all the others, teaching, nursing, I had them all. And he said, "Well, I'm afraid we've run out of executive officer positions. I will have to put you in a lower grade for a little while." Well, at that time, I wasn't brave enough to ask for how long, but I trusted him. After 4.5 months, nearly 5 months, I was just what I was doing, basic clerical stuff, which I was terribly disappointed. Now, I was to be the clerical officer for a team of executive officers. The irony was I should have been in that team as an executive officer, but I wasn't. So I sat with not enough to do. And I heard one of the men say I was in the same room, he spoke across his colleague, "Isn't she going to make the tea?" Well, again, I didn't hear because he clearly wasn't speaking to me, he didn't address directly to me. But then the woman who was in team, she said, oh, you know, we are a bit busy, and if you don't mind, you could. I said, no, I don't mind doing it today. So I went and made the tea and everything, and I put that cup of tea on the table next to those 4 people. Not one of them raised their eye to look at me or to say thank you for that tea. So then I realized, oh, this is what this is going to be. This is not going to happen again. Anyhow, I was still waiting for my real post. And one day when we were just the 2 of us, myself and the woman in the office, she said to me, you look rather self-contained. And I said, well, yes, I am. That's what happens to people when you're brought up and educated by Carmelite nuns. And then it tricked with her because she was from Londonderry and she went to convent school, Ursuline nuns. So we had a lot to talk about. Our educational background was almost identical. So we struck up a friendship, but only when the 2 of us were together. When the others came into the room, there was nothing. Anyhow, she persuaded me to do a little trickery, go and take the civil service exam and get in again through the executive route, and I was bound to get my real post, which I did. It did work out, but when I went to human resources or personnel at the time, I was told, oh, well, you can have an executive post, but I'm afraid it wouldn't be an established one. We could only take you in a temporary position and you would lose all your entitlements. Well, that meant nothing to me because I had no intention of making a career in the civil service. I said, okay, as long as the salary was the same. So I began to work for Newton's division, appeals and plannings, caught on to that work very quickly, and I did it for 3.5 years. And in the meantime, I hadn't seen another single Black person. So what I did lunchtime, I went to Westminster Library. I was doing an evening class at the time in theology, and that's where I did my homework, looked at all the reference books. At the end of 3.5 years, when I left the civil service, I had a diploma in theology and an experience that I would not forget. And I must share this little bit because I think it was humorous looking back now. When I first sat at my desk as an executive officer, the cleaning lady, the first thing she did, and we had real liquor baskets then, waste paper basket, she just upturned my basket with all the stuff on my desk and left it for me for the next day. Okay, it said nothing. Who was I to complain to? I didn't know anything about that. And then the next day, she did the same thing, and I decided I was going to put my stuff in somebody else's basket. And then finally, this is the other bit of, apart from the having to wait a long time for my job and the various things about the baskets, I was leaving the office at 5:15 one afternoon, and the cleaners we were stone stairs, and she was mopping the stairs, and I said, excuse me. So I waited to get down, and she waited until I got onto the stair, the next step. And she took that mop out of that dirty water and put it on my feet. So I was soaking wet with the dirty water. And I said, okay, who again, there was nobody to complain to then. So it was just around the time I was deciding to leave anyway, because I wanted to stay home with my children. By that time, I had 3 young ones. And I thought I'll leave the civil service. Stayed at home for about 2.5 years. I'm going to run through this because, you know, there's better stuff to come at the back. I stayed with them, and after 2.5 years, I got an opportunity, I seized an opportunity to go and train as a child care officer. There was a national emergency for child care officers, and you had to be seconded by a department. I was lucky to be seconded by Wandsworth and Southwark, but I chose Wandsworth. So I went on this course. There were 98 people trained. It was a national course, and I was the only Black person on that course. Okay, I managed it. I was pretty reserved. I didn't particularly care for company, but still, in a course like that, you need to have relationships even in your local seminar group. had one or two people just friendly. The course was a 2-year course, and it was for applied social studies. We finished that and then started to work as a social worker. And we had to sit in conferences. So I sat in so many conferences, education conferences, until my utter amazement, not even amazement, shock and hurt, when I heard Black families being discussed in the negative, stereotypical way, and Black children being assessed, almost all of them being assessed as educationally subnormal and sent to educationally subnormal schools. I had to sit through many of those meetings. All this time, I'm thinking about my own 2 children who were in school and whether they would be exposed to attitudes like that. So I decided something had to be done. And at the same time, there was the infamous, now infamous Rivers of Blood speech. And everybody that was, everybody was talking about it in the office, all over, on TV. So I had an agreement with my husband. I said, listen, I don't want our children to be damaged in this way from an early age. We've got to go back to Guyana. Of course, he was still doing his training. And I said, okay, I'll precede you, I'll go with them, and then when you're through, we'll be reunited as a family. So I did, took my children, took them back to Guyana. They all went to a lovely prep school, did very well. It was a very successful exercise, I could tell you, because to this day, they talk about it, their childhood experiences. It did wonders for them because they were sure of who they were. I took them back because I wanted them to see Black people in positions of influence and prestige, and they did. They had a lovely start in life. They know who they are, and I'm proud of them because they are quite sure about their heritage and their identity and who they are. Okay, now how did I come back to England? By which, after 2 years, I spent 4 years with the children. And during that time, I worked as a probation and welfare officer. And I was involved with assessing children to go to England to join parents. And, I knew what was going to be the outcome of those children, but of course, I didn't say that with the applicants, but discussed that in my welfare group in Guyana. After 4 years, my husband was offered a job at the Guyana High Commission. So I thought, no, I'm not going to separate the children again. We are going to come back as a family, which we did. And I got a job as a basic grade social worker. By that time, I'd been trained for about 5 years, I think. And I was glad for the job. But my colleagues, 2 of them that were in the London seminar group, they were already area managers. They were a bit embarrassed. I wasn't, because I knew my work and I knew I was going to succeed anyway. But sadly, I didn't think the journey was going to be so long before I got to team manager. The level of discrimination at the time, it was so high. I wouldn't even want to talk about it now. Because there were no complaints procedures. There were no, there was a group of other Black people that I was the only person in that office, in that borough anyway. And after I'd been there for about 5 years, I began to, for me, it was like a sense of empowerment. I said, I've got to do something about this. I'm not going to sit through meetings again, hearing Black people being defamed, seeing Black children being wrongly assessed. And I thought, okay, I've got to find a like-minded person. I know I can't do this. So I found a health visitor. She was the only person. And she managed to put me in touch with a fledgling organization called the Association of Black Social Workers and Allied Professions. And boy, was I at home. In it was a group of about 5 active people. There were 1 psychiatrist, a psychologist, myself and 2 other people who were social workers. And I don't want to say I took the lead in it, but I probably did. I said, we've got to do something about this. We have got to do something about our Black children who are being mistreated, misrepresented, and probably being damaged for the rest of their lives. So we decided that, okay, the approach would have been to tackle departmental policies and procedures. For the first thing was for assessing, for the assessment and training of social workers, because they weren't, well, I couldn't see many, but there were a few, but not in the departments that I worked. And I suppose because I was the oldest of the 5 people, I began to take the lead in looking at the ways in which we could affect social services policies and procedures. And we decided, I'm going to use the we because I don't really want to take the claim for all of it. We decided that we were going to tackle education and training. We were going to tackle assessment of children, and the other main issues like where children are placed and stuff like that. Well, also the Association of Black Social Workers, we were going to look overall at Black people's needs and how they're dealt with in social services, including the mental health section. But that wasn't my area of expertise, so another person took that. Now, in the Association of Black Social Workers at Allied Career became the focal focus for Blackness and social welfare issues. It happened like that. And we decided, okay, we're going to run with this. Now, one of my fortes was writing articles, and I started to churn them out. And they were published in the professional journals, and people started to take notice of me in the issues. All this time, I'm still a basic grade social worker. I'm trying to get a team worker post, could not get it. Everywhere I went, I was told I would have been too intimidating, I was too experienced with the team, I would not fit in. I can't remember the number of interviews I had. And I said, okay, in the meantime, I've been doing a diploma course in socio-legal studies. That was 1 year, did that, completed it. These things were evening classes. And then I started the LLB, got halfway through that and realized, my children are coming into early teenage now and I need to give them some more attention. So I decided I was going to drop out of that. I have to say the course lecturer was disappointed. He pursued me to the end and I said, no, I couldn't do it. I've got to put my children first again. So I didn't complete the LLB, but the socio-legal studies one. Okay. Because of my position in the Association of Black Social Workers and the things that I was writing, we were asked to do so many things. So because of that, I became a member of the Family Rights Group, then the chair of the Family Rights Group. Then I was founding member of the Race Equality Unit in collaboration with the National Institute of Social Work. Let me see what else I had here. I was collaborating with the National Children's Bureau. I was in collaboration with the Central Council for Education and Training in Social Work on training issues and the selection of social workers. Also visiting colleges and universities that were trainings. All of this I did. I had to say at that point, I was given permission to do this stuff because it was bringing my local authority, showing it up in a good light, in that all these brilliant things were happening out in this particular borough. Well, I'm still a basic social worker. We're coming up to 9 years. My colleagues had all moved on. One was actually an assistant director. And then I thought, then is when racism really became an issue for me. I was saying there's no other reason. I am as qualified or even more than some of these people, and why can't I get a job? So I decided, okay, I'm going to have one last throw of the dice. I'm going to get a diploma in management. That one was a full-time one. I was seconded because I was really becoming very troublesome, let's say, in my department. So I did get the 1 year full-time course in management that I passed. But while I was on that course, the person who was conducting said to me, you know, you should be in a different job, not in this one. I would help you to write your CV, and if you don't get a job, an area manager's job, I'm going to eat my hat. I did, and I got 2 jobs. 2, one in Haringey, one in Lambeth. Now I took the one in Lambeth because it was near home, and at the time Lambeth was doing a lot of creative work. And I really wanted to get into Lambeth. And I did. I met another group of Black people who were keen at that time to follow up and pursue issues relating to Black people. And I can say in absolute honesty that from 1985, this was when I was appointed as an area manager. Incidentally, in 1985, I was the only Black area manager in England and Wales. In 1985, I was the only Black area manager in Wales. When I went to Lambeth, the first thing people said to me, this borough is not ready for a Black area manager. That's right. And then the office, they went on strike. Lots of things happened. People decided that everything was wrong, the union got involved and whatnot. By which time I decided I was going to write an article, and I think that was my best article. It's about managing a multiracial workforce. I had it published. It's now used as it was not still, I suppose, used as a teaching instrument. And because I was basing that on my own experiences as a Black manager without any supports. And I'm going to run through some of this very quickly. One of the things that is not funny now, but I could laugh at it. I was going to at a meeting. One of my staff had actually been charged with shoplifting on a Saturday, and in her bag were some stamps from the local authority. So the Monday, I had to claim. I didn't go. I sent my PA to go and bring. So of course we had to have a disciplinary meeting, and I thought, okay, because she was involved, I was involved with it right from the beginning. I would go to the disciplinary meeting. As I sat there with the human resource people, the disciplinary panel, and the person, again, this is Lambert, I was the only Black person in that crowd. The union man who was supposed to be seeing the person the staff member who was in trouble, he parted the crowd, came straight up to me, called me by the woman's name, and said, "Oh, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to look through your file. I'm the person who's going to represent you." He thought I was the person who was being disciplined. Well, of course, the human resource people were very embarrassed. No, that's the area manager. But the point had been made. I'm sure you grasped what the point was there, because only Black people were being disciplined at the time. Anyhow, I spoke to the woman. Indeed, I was put in mitigating circumstances for her, and she was one of my best workers. So she was given a final warning, so she stayed. But it wasn't insulting to me. It really reinforced what was going on in people's minds as far as Black people were concerned. Because in that whole crowd, I was the only Black person, but he came straight to me and addressed me as the person who was being disciplined. Let me see, I think I'm going to, yeah, okay, let me see. I'm going to stop here for a little while because Okay, no, I carried on with my work in Lambeth. I must rush it on to the end. What did I do? Develop a lot of specialist knowledge in child protection and the 1989 Children Act. And I was telling my daughter a few weeks ago, when that act was being reviewed, I was asked to chair the review. I was asked to chair the review, which to me is a feather in my cap. I was asked to chair a review of the 1989 Children Act. I carried on working for Lambeth. Okay, I could skate through this. Had oversight from both St. Thomas's and King's College Hospitals social work service. I left Lambeth quite happy that I'd done my bit. I'd left a legacy of work. It's still on file. People still ring me up and say they've seen my name on certain documents. And then I went and I did 9 years with Voice for the Child in Gale as a private investigating officer. I'm going to stop there.
Before you do, you could tell them what grade you were when you left London.
Okay, oh yes, from area manager I was promoted upwards, district manager, then assistant director, and then I was acting for the director for a little while, and then yeah, deputy director. And then I retired from Lambeth.
No, Waveney, that was it was just magnificent. I once watched I don't know if people remember this, a program about the suffragettes called Shoulder to Shoulder. And one of the early quotes in that was, and I was reminded of it as you were speaking, if you want a job done, ask a busy woman. That seems to me to be so true of you. You describe being at work, mother of the family, an author, a campaigner, both for yourself and for others, and a student at the same time. What more? That sort of describes that quote to me. Yeah. So magnificent. Thank you. We've got a few people logged up for questions, so I'll go to Rupert Morris, who's chair of the National Liberal Club first.
Okay, could I just say something?
Yes.
I was able to do all of those things because I had 3 well-behaved children.
Hello, Waveney, I just wanted to ask you, I was fascinated that your sort of start in social work was when you joined this Association of Black Social Workers. It just made me wonder what was happening with the white social workers, and at what point did you get together? Because I can imagine there must have been, what was the sort of proportion? Were there very few black social workers, and at what point did they start to work together?
Okay. The British Association for Social Workers was a totally white organization. I was one of the people who applied to be a member, and I was refused. I had no comeback, no answer to my application. And there were a couple of other people that had that kind of experience. So we decided, it was like a similar thing that happened to the black churches. We couldn't get into the British Association of Social Workers. I wanted to write articles. They wouldn't accept me or my articles. So we decided to, separate out and do the Association of Black Social Workers and Allied Professions. That was the reason why it was founded. We never collaborated, actually. We tried to, particularly on the area when I was dealing with the training and retention of staff. And I thought it would have been a good subject for us to agree on, nothing. No. And at that time, we were quite happy to go our separate ways. We did. We were very successful, and our record is there to prove it.
I'll go to Claire Main next. Claire? Is she there too?
Waiting for her to unmute. She's not unmuting. Maybe go to something else.
Okay, go to the David Lloyd George room, then we'll come back to Claire when in a moment. So we have Isha by those things.
Yeah. Thank you. It's such a wonderful talk. And I just want to ask you one question. I'm not about this racial thing. I just want, as a social worker, because I have a son who's graduating from university. When they look at the jobs, they look at the teaching, social working. So what's your advice for young people who wanted to get into this profession? Just what is, the perspective? Thank you very much.
Okay. When I left high school, I actually wanted to be a teacher. In fact, I wanted to be a nun. But then a teaching nun. I wanted to be like Miss Jean Brodie. I always used my heroine. Then as I trained as a nurse. For young people, if nursing is something that people like, you've got to have an aptitude for nursing. I didn't. I did very well at the exams, but I didn't particularly like the practical bit of nursing. But if the people who do like it, it is a most admirable profession to be in. It really is, if you do like caring for people. And I've met some nurses who had that gift. I met some who didn't. But you have to like people. You could tell it when you meet a nurse who cares for
And
people.
not social work.
Sorry?
And social work?
Similar. Okay, social workers tend to, this is going to be a bit extreme, but tend to attract people who themselves have experienced a lot of problems. And they actually, even within a casework situation, you could see their approach to, not all, I said it does tend to attract some people who've had some unfortunate experiences in life. And then that gets involved with the work that they do. So it needs a very good supervisor to actually get them to separate out their feelings and experiences from the ones of the client. But social work, oh yes, I mean, I love it. And I would encourage anybody, if you want to do that, again,
Thank you.
have to feel for people.
Thank you. Dr. Elizabeth Negus next.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams, for such a riveting talk. It's the story of a lot of Black people who came to England in the 50s and 60s, the story of marginalization and racism. It's such a common and disturbing narrative. In any event, you have done exceptionally well and quite a good role model for this generation and generations to come. My question to you now, in light of the world we currently live in, have you seen or experienced any significant changes in terms of racism? And I ask this question because you opened your talk with the level of racism you experienced.
Yes, yes, seeing it now, I'm actually, whenever I see or hear about racism, at this stage in the lives of people, both Black and even young people, I get very angry because there's no way that people should be allowed to accept the level of racism, the in-your-face racism that happens in this country. Black people have been here for a long time and should be, I'm going to have to say, respected just a little bit more. There are some times I see it and people take it for granted and say, oh, well, that's the times we're living in. And I always say, no, I'm sorry. We need to be respectful to each other. It doesn't mind who you are. You do the same to people as you would like them to do them. And I personally wouldn't stand for I could sense it. I mean, any Black person who's working in this country, you could spot a racist person a mile off. You can do it. You get the vibes. You don't even have to say anything. Or even they say, you would know. So I would say to people, do not sit by and accept stuff like that. And the fortunate thing is, there are complaints procedures now. people could complain, people could go to court and all that. In my time, we didn't have that facility. We just muddled through, but I can say because of that, another generation, another set, we should not take it.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Clemaine, she with us now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Arlene.
Arlene, hi. First, can I ask my question?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. First, I just wanted to thank you, Mrs. Williams, for a brilliant talk. It was really insightful, and I can definitely understand your daughter better, having understood your experience. The trait is amazing, so thank you for that. My question really is, do you think your strength comes from your heritage and your parents and the values they instilled in you? Or was it the fact that you had to devise a life and protect your family, and social work gave you the intellectual freedom and also the action to do that?
Okay, I think it's a bit of both of my strength. I mean, my mother, she was as solid as a rock. My father as well as my mother. I've been in a family of strong women. I've got 3 other siblings, and they are my youngest, the youngest of my siblings. She's a baby and she's 82. And if we start talking, it's as though we're still teenagers. The strength for me comes from my heritage. I've always been exposed to strong Black women in Guyana when I was growing up. And apart from that, again, with my upbringing, my education by Carmelite nuns, they were raising strong, they were educating strong people, strong women. So a bit of that comes from my education and my own will to forge a way through. There's always a way out of anything. And I know at least 2 of my children have got that attitude. You just keep going, there is a way. There is another way. Yeah.
Thank you. It's lovely to see, and certainly a lot to be learned, I think, from how you've navigated and managed your career, but stayed true to yourself. And the other question I've got is it possible to get a copy of your paper, managing in a multiracial sort of organisation? Because I think that pro side of you as well is certainly very, very beneficial and helpful for where we are today.
Yes, of course, with pleasure. I love it, and you love it too. Managing a multiracial workforce. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, lovely. Time is coming to a close, maybe, and we're pressed for time to go upstairs and have a bite of supper for those of us who are in the club. So I'll move to invite Nicola to.
She's not there.
She's not there.
Sorry, okay.
To Nicola for a bit of thanks to her mum.
Well, it's weird how life can take you into all sorts of interesting places, but I never thought I'd actually end up giving a vote of thanks to my own mother for a speech that she has made. I'm incredibly proud. When this was set up, I didn't want people to think I was some sort of nepotism because Nicola's a member of the club. Waveney Williams became a speaker, but I always knew she had an awful lot to say off her own back. And in fact, she's actually left stuff out, particularly the later stuff. And she really has been, as much as I have achieved a fair amount of success in my fields that I've been in, I've always said that my mother, for example, did this, and she had 3 children. I mean, she had my dad as well, so that helps, but she had 3 of us, and at one point, all 3 of us were on the path. So that is an awful lot to deal with the very in-your-face racism of the 60s and 70s, and she managed to navigate that with intellect and style. There's a whole other thing about somebody saying to her, well, I hope she's got the intellect to match those shoes she's wearing, to match those clothes she's wearing. Whole other story behind that. But I would actually, to keep this very short, I would like to say a vote of thanks. Having not done a vote of thanks, well, I'm not really quite sure how this works. So I'm going to do a vote of thanks particularly to my mother for having shared her insights with us and for making me feel incredibly proud. I would extend that vote of thanks to Tim and Val, who are in the room with me. Val for organising this and asking my mother to speak. To give the last one to the year is a real honour in itself. But Tim there as the vice chair being here as well. And for all of you, whether you're listening at home or listening in the Lord George Room anyway, thank you very much. I really hope that this has been a benefit to you. Those of us who are going to go upstairs and have some dinner, we can, you know, I'm sure my mum was quite happy to take loads more questions. But thank you all, and I really hope it has been a positive. And I think it might go on the YouTube website. So if anyone wants to download it later, they can. And Arlene, you can definitely have a copy of that paper.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you.